Dear friends, today we're going to share a true and heartbreaking incident that will shake the ground beneath your feet and make you wonder if such a thing is even possible. A poor widow's 3 young daughters, who were never married, suddenly became married. They had no intention of going out or interacting with anyone. The question then arises, how did all this happen? Was this atrocity committed by their own father, or a stepbrother, or perhaps an uncle, a maternal uncle, or some other close relative? The relative they trusted the most, yet from whom such a thing was never expected. This incident shook the entire village. The walls of the houses trembled when the true truth was revealed. So, without wasting any time, let's hear this shameful story that proves that not every predator is out there. Often, they hide inside the house, and their face is hidden by the one they trust the most. This is the story of a heartbroken, hardworking, and poor widow named Sridevi. Her first husband died in an accident many years ago. They had a son, who remained with her even after her second marriage. Sridevi later remarried and had 6 daughters with him. All of them were beautiful, shy, and charming, but fate was unfaithful again. Her second husband also did not live long, and Sridevi became a widow again. But she never neglected her daughters' upbringing and education. Sridevi lived with her daughters in a mud house in a small village in Bihar. She spent the day washing dishes, sweeping, and washing clothes in other people's homes. In the evenings, whatever coins or leftover food she could find were the only means of support for her family. Her son from her first husband was named Rajiv. He was older and had always stayed at home. Sridevi's daughters generally considered her a brother and respected her. Life was full of hardships, but somehow, it was going on. Then one day, a storm struck, pulling the ground from under Sridevi's feet. Suddenly, her eldest daughter began to feel unwell. Weakness, nausea, and dizziness troubled her mother. At first, Sridevi couldn't understand, but as her condition worsened, she took her to a clinic in Jila city. After examining her, the doctor said something that tore her mother's heart. "Your daughter is expecting a baby." Hearing this, a sensation ran through Sridevi's body. Her daughter hadn't even been married yet. She was respectable and well-behaved. How could this have happened? Her lips trembled. Tears welled up in her eyes. How did this happen? Who did it? When? Why? Shocked, her mother scolded her daughter, slapped her, and made her cry. But when her daughter, sobbing, kept repeating, "Amma, I've never even seen anyone. I swear to God, it's not my fault." Quote, the mother's heart was broken. She knew her daughter wasn't lying. But the grief hadn't subsided when, a few days later, her second and then her third daughter also turned up in the same condition. Everyone's lips echoed the same sentence. "Mother, we don't know anything. We don't remember anything." Quote, this shock tore Sridevi's heart apart. For days, she languished in grief, crying and thinking, but nothing came to light. Finally, one day, she mustered up the courage and went to the court of King Virendra Singh of Varanasi, hoping for justice.
Can you please just hear me out?
The court was in session. The king was seated on his throne, listening to the grievances of his subjects. Just then, Sridevi entered. Her face was wet with tears, her clothes caked with mud, her feet bare, and her eyes burned with one question: when will my daughters get justice? The king looked at her and asked, "Mother, why are you crying? What is your sorrow?" Quote, Sridevi looked around for a moment and remained silent. The minister stepped forward and said, "Mother, have you come to the court? Open your mouth. Tell me what's troubling you." Quote, but Sridevi's voice trembled. "Your Majesty, I want to speak to you alone. My grief is such that if I were to tell it in front of everyone, even the walls of my house would tremble with shame." Quote, the king was shocked. But seeing the woman's trembling voice and the grief evident on her face, he relented. He ordered, "This mother be taken inside my special room." I want to hear her plea. Quote, two soldiers stepped forward and led Sri Devi inside. Once there, she fell at the king's feet and burst into tears. King Virendra Singh's heart was filled with sorrow. She said, Mother, your plea is now my plea. Tell me the truth about what has happened. If there is a brute lurking in my kingdom, I will hunt him down and make a lesson for the entire kingdom. Quote, Sridevi wiped her tears and began speaking in a trembling voice. Sridevi sighed before Raja Virendra Singh and began speaking. Your Majesty, I am a widow. My first husband died of an illness years ago. I have a son from him who still lives with me. I later remarried and had 6 daughters with him. But time turned out to be so cruel that even that second husband didn't live long, and I was left alone once again. Your Majesty, the entire burden of raising my 6 children fell on my shoulders. I spent all day sweeping and mopping the houses of the wealthy in Varanasi, washing dishes and washing clothes. And whatever few coins or leftover food I get, I feed them. My daughters are very decent and modest. They never go out alone. They always wear veils, dupattas on their heads, their eyes downcast. I have taught them the values of truth and honor. My life was going along somehow until one day my eldest daughter's health began to deteriorate. Quote, she began to weaken. She felt dizzy. She started vomiting. I panicked and took her to the town hakim and doctor. After examining her, the doctor said, your daughter is expecting. Hearing this, my breath stopped. The ground beneath my feet slipped away. My daughter wasn't even married yet. How could I believe this? I brought her home. She was furious. She hit her, slapped her, and asked repeatedly, who did all this? Whose child is this? Quote, but she just kept crying and fell at my feet, saying, Amma, I don't know. I swear to God, I haven't even seen anyone, haven't even spoken to anyone. I've never even gone out alone. I don't know how all this happened. Quote, Maharaj, she is my daughter. I gave birth to her, raised her, and raised her. I can recognize the lies in her eyes, and I knew she was telling the truth. We kept quiet. The time came, her baby was born, and we held him close to our chest. But a few months later, my second daughter's health began to deteriorate. I took her to the same doctor, and then received the same news. Your daughter is with Om. My heart sank. My limbs went numb. Who is doing all this? How is this happening? No one comes to our house. My daughters never go out. No one even knocks on our door. And, Your Majesty, this wasn't enough. A few days later, my third daughter fell ill, and she too was with Om. I endured it. But I stayed awake all night, pleading to God, oh God, tell me who is doing all this. But the truth remained hidden. No trace was found. Now my patience is exhausted. I want to know who that cruel man is who robs my daughters of their innocence and then disappears silently. I want justice, Your Majesty. I want justice. Saying this, Sridevi fell at the king's feet. A deep silence fell over the court. King Virendra Singh's face grew stern and serious. He decided this wasn't just a mother's pain anymore. It had become a matter of the entire kingdom. Hearing Sridevi's words, the court fell silent, as if the wind had stopped. King Virendra Singh stood up from his seat and, taking a deep breath, said, Mother, you've come to speak now, when the lives of 3 daughters have been ruined. You should have come when the first daughter was born. If you had told me then, perhaps the other 2 girls wouldn't have had to see this day. The king's voice was tinged with pain and anger. He said, but it's also true. Poor people like you suppress the truth out of fear of disgrace. You drink your own blood to protect your daughter's honor. And when this poison starts biting inside, you're forced to scream. The king paused for a moment. Then, softly, he said, Mother, you're one of those who come late, but you do come. Sridevi lowered her gaze in embarrassment. Tears welled up in her eyes, and in a trembling voice, she said, Your Majesty, you are right. I should have come earlier. But now whatever had to happen has happened. What had to happen has happened. Now I have only one request, that the culprit of my daughters be caught. Who is that cruel man who quietly robs us of our dignity and then walks away? The king's gaze hardened. His heart was boiling with passion. He said, Amma, this is not your issue now. It belongs to my kingdom. As long as I live, no cruel man will be allowed to oppress helpless and innocent women and escape punishment. If even one mother in my kingdom is helpless, then my throne will be cursed. Now go and find peace. Your pain is now my pain. Sridevi adjusted the palu of her sari. Tears welled in her eyes, and she silently left. The king returned to the court, ostensibly to listen to the complaints of his subjects. But his heart and mind were preoccupied with one thing. After all, who is this person who lives innocently in the daylight and turns into a beast in the darkness of the night? After the court was over, he went straight to his room and immediately called the special minister. When the minister entered, seeing the deep shadow of worry on the king's face, he asked, Your Majesty, what is this sorrow that has made you so restless? The king said sharply, Wazir, there is a beast hiding in my kingdom who has committed a sin so grave that the earth would tremble. He ruined the mother's 3 daughters, and today she remains crying in my court. Tell me, is this justice? The minister said regretfully, This is a grave crime, Your Majesty. What are your orders now? The king replied angrily, I want to find out who that person is, when he comes, and how he gets in. He is eating away at that house like termites, and we must expose him. The minister thought for a moment, then he said softly, Your Majesty, even walls have ears. I have a trick, but I can't tell you in public. The king bowed his head and said, Come closer and tell me immediately. The minister stepped forward and whispered his practical wisdom into the king's ears. A method that would not only silently lay a trap, but also catch the beast naked in his tracks. The king immediately ordered him to go and execute it this very night. Night was falling, darkness was creeping in when Wazir Chand, accompanied by soldiers and a dog, quietly arrived at Sridevi's house. He knocked on the door. Surprised, Sridevi opened the door and asked, Wazir Sahib, are you here at this time? The minister said seriously, Mother, after the grief you shared with Your Majesty, he couldn't sleep the whole night. Now we will find that beast, but we need your help. Seeing the dog tied to the minister's hand, Sridevi asked in surprise, Mr. Minister, why have you brought this dog? What will you do with it? The minister said in a soft but serious tone, Mother, take me inside. I'll tell you everything. Sridevi opened the door. The minister entered the house and said softly, Tonight, we will use this dog to expose that beast. You all have to remain silent. Don't make any noise. You have to pretend as if you don't know anything. Then the minister continued, If our plan succeeds, that beast will be caught red-handed. With that, he tied the dog to the edge of the courtyard, where someone could jump in through the roof. Then he explained to Sridevi and her daughters that no one should scream tonight. They must just watch and endure. As soon as that unfortunate man enters, this dog will bark loudly, and our soldiers will rush in. The minister ordered 2 guards to keep watch from all sides. After reassuring Sridevi and her frightened daughters, he returned to the palace and presented himself directly to the king. The king anxiously asked, Wazir, is the trap set? He tied the dog in its proper place. The minister bowed his head respectfully and said, Yes, Your Majesty, I have done everything as it should be. Now, if that brute comes again today, he won't be able to return alive. The king took a deep breath and said, Wazir, I cannot sleep until I punish that tyrant. If innocent women continue to cry in my kingdom, it is a disgrace to my kingdom. Night began to fall. The entire village fell silent. An unknown dread lingered even in the moonlight. Then, around midnight, a shadow appeared on the roof of Sridevi's house. A man, walking stealthily, jumped down and landed in the courtyard. The next moment, the dog began barking loudly. The sound was so loud that not only Sridevi and her daughters woke up, but the policemen hiding nearby also rushed to their feet. Sridevi hugged her daughters and whispered to herself, "He's here." The same brutal policeman rushed in. The masked man ran in panic, but was immediately apprehended. His hands were twisted and he was pinned to the ground. A black cloth was tied over his face. The policeman pulled off the mask, and in an instant, Sridevi and her daughters screamed.
It feels great when it's clean. The new...
Their eyes turned to stone, their breaths stopped. There was the man they had trusted for years. Rajesh, their stepson, who had grown up with them in the house and whom they still considered a brother. Morning came and King Virendra Singh's court was in session. The criminal, handcuffed, sat before the king, his head bowed on his knees. People stared at him in amazement, while Sridevi stood silently in a corner with her daughters. Now it was time to lift the veil, to reveal the truth. At that moment, the man was kneeling in the king's court. A black mask covered his face, his hands in chains, and his entire body trembling with fear. Sridevi arrived with her 6 daughters. King Virendra Singh signaled, and the court was cleared. Now only the culprit, the king, the minister, Sridevi, and her daughters were present. The king said sternly, "Aren't you afraid of me? Don't you know that in my kingdom, there is only one punishment for dishonoring a woman? Death?" Then he ordered the guards, "Remove the veil from his face. I want to see what that vile face is that ruined a mother's 3 daughters." As soon as the veil was removed, a deep silence descended upon the entire hall. A storm of shock, pain, and anger surged in Sridevi's eyes. She screamed uncontrollably, "Rajesh, you did all this." This was the same stepson Sridevi had with her first husband, the one she had never considered different from her and her daughters, the one all her daughters had called brother for years. Sridevi stepped forward and spat in his face. Quote, "You shameless bastard, aren't you ashamed? These girls grew up in your shadow. You were supposed to protect their heads. You were their protector, and you turned out to be the murderer of their honor." Then she slapped him hard on the cheek. The daughters cowered in fear and clung to their mother, crying. The king angrily drew his sword from his sheath and, holding the tip close to the culprit's head, roared, "Now tell the truth. Why did you commit this heinous act? If you utter even one word of lie, this sword will cleave your head in 2. Rajesh's breathing became labored. His face turned pale. In a trembling voice, he said, "Your Majesty, I am Sridevi's stepson. All these girls are my stepsisters," he continued, haltingly. "My father passed away years ago. My mother kept me with her, raised me with her daughters. But there was always a bitterness, a jealousy in my heart. As these girls grew older, their beauty unleashed the devil within me. My intentions became evil, but I knew they would never accept me. I told my mother to get my eldest daughter married, but she brushed me off. I feared they would all marry and leave this house one day. And the devil within me became uncontrollable. Rajesh bowed his head and said, "My lust blinded me. I thought that if I laid hands on them in the dark of night, no one would catch me. I went to a hakim and asked him to give me herbs that, upon smelling, would instantly make a person unconscious." Rajesh bowed his head in confession, and in a trembling voice, he said, "I used to get herbs from a hakim, which, when inhaled, would render a person unconscious for 4 to 5 hours. In the dark of night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I would come down from the roof. I would make Sridevi, Bobby, and her daughters smell those herbs, and they would all fall unconscious." He remained silent for a moment, then lowered his eyes and said, "Then, I would torture whichever sister I had an evil eye on and put her back in her clothes so that when she regained consciousness in the morning, she would remember nothing. I would climb back up to the roof and live the rest of the day as if nothing had happened." Rajesh's voice trembled. "I committed this crime repeatedly for months. If I had seen the dog tied on the roof tonight and suspected a trap, I would have turned back. But I thought this dog was probably brought in for protection or petting. I was focused on my own savagery. That's why I came and got caught. With that, he fell silent. The court fell silent. A mother's grief shone on Sridevi's face, and shock and tears welled up in her daughter's eyes. King Virendra Singh's face was red with anger. The king looked at the Wazir-e-Khas and gave his orders with a gentle but decisive gesture. The Wazir immediately drew his sword from his sheath, stepped forward, and with a single blow, severed the head of the brute, his stepbrother Rajesh. His body writhed in agony for a few moments, then fell silent forever. Justice had been established in the court. The king looked at Sridevi and said softly, Amma, if you had come to me earlier, perhaps your 3 daughters would not have endured this ordeal. But what's done is done. I promise that your 3 daughters will find the happiness they deserve. I will select 3 of the best young men in my kingdom, good-looking, respectable, and prosperous, and I will give your daughters hands to them. The dowry, gold, silver, and everything else would be provided by the king. Within a few days, all 3 daughters were given lavish weddings. The entire kingdom witnessed their joyous celebrations. Sridevi fell at the king's feet and wept. She thanked him repeatedly. The king held her head and said, When your remaining 3 daughters grow up, please let me know. I will find respectable matches for them too. No daughter is alone in this kingdom. Every oppressed mother is my mother,